Okay, we're on. I want to say a special thanks to Mark and Mike for singing The Happy Wanderer today. I dearly love that song, and today is about imagination, so I brought with me my friend, he's on the altar there, Father John Kirsch. He's a Catholic mystic. He died in 2002. Dear, dear friend of mine. And he taught me more about imagination than anybody. And it was imagination in nature, so that's where we're heading today. And I must have played that song hundreds of times over the years, over the 30 plus years that I knew him, because it was his favorite. And he would have his Catholic vestment on and his hiking boots. And his yellow lab dog was laying beside the altar. And he was just kind of a rough character and kind of a mountain goat. And even in my youth, I couldn't keep up with him very good. So that's what this is about today, and to go into nature and how the imagination of the divine can support us more through these very challenging times, and how it sustains and fulfills that need for support and comfort and challenge. And so anyway, that's where we head. So because it's about imagination, I made up a new color. Yeah, I made up a new color. It's a pigment of my imagination. All right, there we go. Okay, that's my attempt at humor. Okay, so I have this little bookmarker. Whoops, you have to go this way for that. And this was the flyer from John's funeral, and so I wanted to start with that. And it's a picture of John Kirsch with his dog Raven, the last dog he had. And it says, "Today is a beautiful, sunny, blue sky, windless day. So I drop everything and do the most important thing I can do today. I take my dog Raven and I hike up Mill Creek. At my age, I know this is not a waste of time. I don't go there to accumulate anything. I do find it the best place I have to pray, to contemplate, and find it one place where my busy mind can go empty." So I'm going to pass that around so you can get a little bit closer look at what he looked like. So I first met Father Kirsch. He joined the priesthood late in life when he was about 50. And before that, he was a game biologist, and he wrote a book on elk, primarily the Wapiti elk, the white patch. And so he was a tremendous biologist and seeker of nature. And then, like St. Paul, he kind of got knocked off his horse and had a calling into the priesthood. So he went off to the priesthood, and seminary happened to be in Boston. And I want to find the quote from that. So, and there, the instructor said to him that if he learned anything when he was in seminary, he wanted him to learn that we weren't the ones gracing nature, that nature was engraced in us. It was an ingraced way of being and a knowingness, and this ingracedness is in all of nature, even inanimate things. And so when he came back to Montana, I met him when I was working work-study at Bozeman, trying to be, becoming a nurse. And I was the secretary at the Newman Center for work-study. And so in comes this kind of scraggly guy in hiking boots, and he's the fill-in priest for the weekend. And I go, "Oh, great, okay." And so I make him a sandwich, because what else do you do with people? You feed them. Okay, so I fed him, and then he was so darn interesting. I mean, just the way he spoke, it was just a challenge to listen and to pay attention. And he was funny. I mean, deeply, deeply funny. And kind of sarcastic about formality of Catholicdom and whatever. But he just told me, just in that brief encounter when I was feeding him lunch, that it was his calling to try to make up for some of the damage people are doing to the environment. That he really felt called to do that, and that he felt that so deeply. And over the years that I knew him, he became a chaplain at Carroll College, and he created a class called Ecology Theology, which he called Eco-Theo class. And I was a nurse at that time, and because I was just a little bit older, I filled in as kind of a chaperone for the college kids on these retreats and these experiments up in the mountains and different things, and started to learn from him more and more. And plus, he always wanted to sing Happy Wanderer, so I had to bring the guitar. So we did that a lot. But then he was transferred different places around Montana, as priests do. They get reassigned. And so he was in Three Forks and Dillon for a while, I think, West Yellowstone, Sheridan, Montana. And he was really trying to convince the church at the time to allow him to have a contemplative center called the Living Water Center. And he wanted to teach ecology theology, and he went to California to study with Matthew Fox, who was important at that time for creation-centered spirituality. So John had that background. And the Catholic Church, being stuck in however they were at the time, wouldn't allow that, but they really did allow him to do excursions with people, backpacking, hiking. So every year he would put a pamphlet together and then a list of where we're going, and then off we would go. So I spent my holidays a lot of the times backpacking or hiking with this mystic. And he taught me a lot about Teilhard de Chardin, Anthony de Mello. Yeah, he was just an amazing person. And when I was rereading this book, and it's called I Drink the Living Water, Pat Feldstein, a friend of mine, put it together. And it's Finding Spirit in Nature with Father John Kirsch. And so it's a story of his life. But the beginning part is really pretty funny because it's participants that knew John and learned from him as we go along. And they talk about a lot of frustration with him, okay? Because he wouldn't give you answers. And he'd make you be quiet. And he'd make you hike long, long ways. And then if you were blabbing about something, he'd make you be quiet. And he was just truly a master at the concept of being prepared and purified to take in divine nature. And some of his hikes, when you were sweating to death, you felt purified. You know, you really did, because it was a hard hike and you were, yeah. So here's a quote from the Tao Te Ching. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambitioning and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. John was unbelievably good at confusing you and challenging you when you said something that was, well, it's this way, huh? And maybe not so. And so he was really good. And I remember, as other people in this book, the struggle of, my own personal struggle of slowing down and being quiet. Because when you're on a hike with a bunch of people and different situation, there's a real desire to blab and catch up, and and he just was always silencing us, always asking us, no, you don't have a sense of the place if you're too busy blabbing. You just don't. And I remember the frustration of that, thinking, yeah, right, I'm here with these people and I want to know what they're up to and I can't, and yeah. So, but it was really, really good for me. It was good for my ability to see allness, to see possibilities that I would miss if I wouldn't quit talking. And so that was one thing that was, he would say, nature is crammed full of grace. We are immersed in all of nature because we are nature. The living environment becomes a book of prayer for the heart that hears the energy, yet cannot express the essence of the utmost source. It integrated ecology and spirituality, like Teilhard de Chardin did. And Jesus said, I came that you may have life and have it more abundantly. And so, for imagination, he would have us do things like stand in the middle of a river and be the water. Imagine, we're the water, and we're here now, but we're heading to the Pacific Ocean because we're on this side of the divide. Imagine that. He would have us take turns going into an abandoned bear den. And we would one by one go into the den and curl up like a bear for hibernation. At least that's what I did. And feel the earth of it and the energy of it, and then talk about it. What it would mean to be bare, and what would it mean to hibernate. He would make us stand in the destroyed forest in Yellowstone after those big forest fires in the 80s. And we would stand there the year after the forest fire in all this destruction. And he would invite us to be the destruction. And how that important destruction is in nature. And that was one of the most startling experiences I had, standing in that burnt out, stinky, even the next year was stinky and burnt out. And but the imagination of that it takes intense fire like that to crack open the seeds that will create the next forest. That it was the intensity of that are bringing back the flora and the fauna and that. So he didn't allow us to shun or be separated from the violence of nature. A couple times he almost killed me. Well, we almost got killed because we were on high mountain plateaus and big horrific thunderstorms would come in and we needed to get down. And we needed to get down fast because they got wild, especially in the Beartooths. And boy, it was close sometimes. Yeah. And he would say, nature'd just as soon kill you as look at you. And boy, the truth of that in nature, floods don't care. Forest fires don't care. It's nature. It's a rebirthing, it's a redoing. And so those kind of experiences, he often liked to say things that were shocking to make us, shake out of our complicity. Complicity, that's not the wrong word. But anyway, one of the most tender experiences of my imagination that I had with Father Kirsch was one time we were in the Centennials, and we probably hiked about 5 miles in, and it was a really odd group, I thought. It was Father Kirsch and a buddy of his, long ago buddy of his from the military who was a colonel. And I don't remember colonel of what branch or whatever, and his military buddy. So there was 2 military people and Father Kirsch, myself, and then Marlene Burke, who was a yoga instructor here. I taught yoga with Marlene, so Marlene was with us. So, and then there was a doctor from Russia, a young man, probably a few years older than me. So that was the contingency on this one. So we were going up the Centennials, and tough hike, maybe 5 miles, I don't know, tough for me. But we got up there and we were above timberline, and we got to a place where you could look out, when you get out to the top of the mountain and you can look out forever. And it was like that sweaty, hot trek we had was the purification to come into this almost Disney world. Beautiful, beautiful. And there were thousands and maybe hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sago lilies. Do you know what they are? Have you ever seen a sago lily? Well, they're small, kind of a matte flower, and they're really pale, almost beigey pink. But they're so translucent that they shine. And they only come out a couple weeks of the year. And they're high above timberline in the Centennials, where the weather is just unbelievably harsh. And tons of snow and wind and stuff. And yet here was these delicate little flowers, but thousands of them. And it was so amazing and soft and kind of luscious. And we could look down for forever, and an eagle came over, and the group was really nice at talking about what they saw and how they were experiencing things. And then after our little lunch, we kind of fell asleep or it was supposed to be a meditation, but we went into trance, maybe fell asleep, into the hillside among these sago lilies. And I remember maybe it was the first time in my life that I let go of my ego, that I didn't have any concept of where I ended and where I began, and I was part of everything. The sky, the breeze that day, the eagle, the sago lilies, the comrades I was with, and it was so unbelievably amazing, the intensity of the indwelling of grace in that nature. And when we were brought out of trance, they're brought out of meditation, I just knew I was changed. And I remember saying to one of the guys who was a smart aleck, I said, I feel like we're part of the bouquet of the flowers. And he says, yeah, I'll bloom an idiot. Yeah, and so that was that one. So over the years, I really came to love and to know that we're engraced, that it's not outside of ourselves, even though we connect. And I read a really interesting thing on Facebook, and I wrote it down, and then I couldn't find it. So I'm sorry I can't quote the author of this, because I think it's a lovely concept. But in the verse, it was that, if you look at a mountain and you see deity, you see God, that's very differently than if you see the ore you're going to mine from it. If you look at a pasture and see the essence of the mixture of life rather than the crop you're going to raise money from, then that's different. And so that our viewpoint in life depends on how we see things, of course. And so in our imagination this month, we're really inviting to expand that, to expand how we imagine how God loves us. I love having the meditations with Panache Desai in the morning, and one day he challenged us during the whole day to just see how God loves us. Could we just spend the whole day being aware of how we're loved? Could we do that? And that so reminded me of Kirsch, my friend Father John, and that can we drop enough of our own personalizations to allow ourselves to be loved more by the divine, to experience and to see it. And the other day I saw another thing on Facebook that was really cute, and again, I didn't write it down, so I can't quote it, but the concept was, well, if you're angry and sad, just go outside and look at nature. Well, if you're really happy and grateful, would you just go outside and look at nature? And so just the meaning of it is that with whatever we do, can we invite the meaning of that? Often when we would hike, we would be looking for Indian chippings. And one time we were out at the Lamar Valley out of Cody, Wyoming, and not Cody, Cook City. But anyway, where the sheep Indians used to live and have their being. And so we had these chippings that we found up on the plateau above the Lamar Valley, and we did a meditation in a teepee ring where they used to sleep, where they used to rest. Somebody did in the past, and that we're so connected with our ancestors, with the natives, with that their presence has steeped for 10,000 years at least, from the pictographs we saw, Montana, and that we're part of this native heritage that knew about honoring the wind and the rain, and that the animals were their brothers and sisters, and that we were all connected. So he never went to accumulate anything. He came to sharpen an ability of being aware of the ingraced nature that we are, that nature is, that we each are, that it's already there, that we don't have to struggle for it, that it's here with us. And a quote from Chief Seattle says, "What happens to the beast happens to the man." So I want to go to another concept that I just think really has been formative to me from Father John, is the concept in nature between a temporary forest and a climax forest. How many are familiar with that concept? Okay. Okay, couple. So if I don't say it exactly right, bear with me. But a temporary forest is for, say, lodgepole pine. Okay? They grow up nice and straight and tall, but they're what's called shade intolerant. That as a species, they can't stand shade. They compete for the sunlight. So if you look at a lodgepole forest, they're all the same height. They all grew up together because they're all competing for the sunshine. They're all competing for the sunshine. And there's a real need for lodgepoles, right? We make fences out of them, we make log homes. And so they really serve a purpose in our lives. Temporary forests do. And they're not sustainable. They can only live like 200, 300 years because they can't tolerate the shade. And so if you're in a lodgepole forest, there's nothing hardly on the ground at all. There's nothing there. And so what happens in forest fires and in the cycle of maturing to become a climax forest, seeds are blown in and they start forming. But a climax forest can live forever. Climax forests can repeat themselves because they're shade tolerant. They can tolerate the darkness. And so thus jungles, right? In a jungle situation, you see all the different levels of growth, from ancient to young to in between, lots of flora and fauna on the thing. So that in Montana would be a Douglas fir, a Doug fir forest, a climax forest. And you have lots of undergrowth and all sorts of generations living together. You have older trees, younger trees, baby trees, bunch of bushes. And so that becomes a really good habitat for animals, of course, because it has more flora and fauna. And he likened this to people, that in our egocentric way of beingness, we're competitive, we compete with each other. We all want to get to the sun first, you know? And that to be what we're to be spiritually, we have to be climax people. We have to tolerate all the generations, but we have to tolerate darkness. We can't all fight for the sun, because it's there for everybody in the climax forest. And so I really like that metaphor because I think it's helpful. Because as a culture, we're so competitive, and it's about us and it's about us. And what through COVID we're learning about is no, it's about everybody. Everybody gets to have. And so not only is the environment moving towards a climax, towards a way of sustainability, then in our spirituality and our religious practices, it makes sense that at Unity we're moving more and more and more towards that, to fulfill that, to bring that in. The engraced nature, the love for everybody. It's not just for the ones that can grow faster and compete better. And so I think, that's just another really lovely thought. And since this isn't a 5-day workshop, I'm going to pull this to an end. But for the meditation today, I wanted to take you all to John's Mountain. And this is a poem by a friend of ours about John. So, taking in all I just said, feet on the floor, and come into your meditation space. And just start to quiet, allowing what we know the sense of this place is. That the sense of this place is love, acceptance, gratitude. So this is a poem called John's Mountain, and it's by Louise Henny and Mary Stiles that I've walked with many times. John's Mountain. I came that day to the mountain to commune with myself and thee. I sat by the stream to hear it sing, heard whispering leaves and twittering birds accompanying its lilting song, and I felt akin to the Indian. In the wilderness so far from man, I thanked thee, God, for letting me live so close to thee. I bowed my head, for I was truly, truly blessed. And I felt akin to the Indian. Again, I came for the blessing that I've always received here on the side of this mountain, your mountain, where tracks that tore your grass bared your soil. And I wept. I wept there with the Indian. Again, I come to the mountain, but could not hear your song. Hate, greed, jealousy drowned your voice, polluted your streams, raped your land. And I wept with the Indian. Mother Earth greets this tired, pain-racked mortal to cradle me deep within her breast. My sore soul's on the eagle's wings over the divide, and they comfort me, the Indian. Voices harmonize as we whisper through the trees, singing in crystal waters to the sea and thee. Great Spirit and my brother, my sister, the Indian. And so just allow that mountain, however you imagine it, whatever sounds you hear, whatever animals or people are present, to be one in the divine engraced nature. Allow the imagination to know this place. That this place is not separate from you, but you. That you are that peacefulness, that engraced nature. Now, as we gently come back to the room, bring that nature to this room. And in your heart, wishing and blessing everyone with it. Thank you. So now we can stand for our prayer of protection. What's that? What? Yeah, I got it. So let us pray together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.